My caregiver experience dates back about a decade ago in terms of it was a series of loved ones over the past decade. First was my brother Eric, who was diagnosed with advanced lung cancer in his 40s. My heart sank from my chest to the floor because I knew what that diagnosis meant and what it would mean for the whole family in terms of how our role would shift from being sister, mother, father, daughters, he had kids, to this teamwork that it would take to help Eric get through treatment and to whatever the outcome would be of his disease. And then a few years later, my mom was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, which was particularly unfair. It felt a bit for us in the family like we'd just gotten up for the first wave. We had lost my brother to his cancer. We got up from the first wave in the ocean, and then another bigger break came over us with mom's diagnosis of ALS. But I had learned enough in the interim between the two to know a bit more about where I could go for help, the types of help I would need, and how to build a team of support. And that was critically important. It's so interesting when people use the word caregiver because it's not something you automatically associate yourself to be when you get this role foisted on you. And I would say for me, there is an aha moment where you realize my role has expanded beyond being a wife, being a daughter, being a sister. And I'll never forget the moment when my mom was diagnosed because it was my mother, my stepdad, and I sitting in a room at Johns Hopkins. And there, when the doctor went through a long litany of all the tests they did, and we were moving closer and closer to him, literally on the edge of our seat, we were not prepared for the diagnosis or what it would mean in terms of the support that my mother would need. And so I got this heat in my body where I felt as powerless as the next person. It's as if all that experience I've had for years went right out the window and was washed away by pure panic, by utter helplessness, and wondering, wow, what's next? So I think no matter how seasoned you are going in, the surprise of any diagnosis is something where you really have to give yourself a moment and give yourself grace. Because it's probably the hardest experience people go through. And it's important to recognize and give that space to allow people to feel their emotion. And for the person delivering the difficult news to recognize that emotion. So I've learned the importance of silence and space and empathy that in a lived way that I would have recognized, but not as appreciated as much if I hadn't been in the experience myself. One of the most frustrating and frankly concerning aspects of the experience I had both with my brother Eric and with my mother was the lack of appreciation for the caregiving role. And what I mean by that is they recognized that our family was stepping in to provide support when Eric and my mother were not part of, were not in the clinic, everything that happened at home. But there was no playbook for us to help support our role in doing that. So there's a presumption made by the health system that caregiving will just naturally be provided, but there's no guidance for it. So the helplessness that people might feel quickly becomes a pattern of scramble to learn where are the resources I need, who are the people that can help me, what's out there that I didn't even know existed. And that's why I felt like landing at National Patient Advocate Foundation and the services that Patient Advocate Foundation brings to the table are so important because that's like the playbook that many people need that they don't know is out there. In the series of my caregiving roles, my husband, Eric, who's always been a patient, he's had 3 kidney transplants over the lifetime of our relationship. But he started to experience difficulty walking. And then that translated into more concerning issues because he was getting less and less stable They thought they had diagnosed and treated the condition so that he was reversing, but sadly, on the way to rehabilitation, he fell and hit his head. So he had both spinal cord injury challenges and on top of that, a traumatic brain injury, which is sort of the worst nightmare. I was always afraid he might fall and hit his head, and darn it, he did. But the good luck is, if there is a silver lining to be had, he's recovered fairly well in terms of the injuries, but the long-term damage of spinal cord injury means that he's not able to walk, he's not able to toilet himself, he is able to use his arms and eat himself, but our house is full of stairs. Going through my head all the time was, we're gonna have to move. We're gonna have to leave our beautiful house that we adore because it's stairs everywhere. We don't have a bathroom on the main floor. We have stairs up to the front door. We have stairs to get to the bedroom. And that was a real panic point for me. And so I talked to the rehabilitation team about what's it going to be like for us? What kind of support can we have? So again, I knew to ask because unfortunately, they don't automatically start to do that assessment until maybe the last week. But the types of changes that need to happen take a little while and some carpentry. So I did proactively ask because I've been thinking about it and how can we still stay home? They actually do have in the rehabilitation hospital, we're lucky, we live in a big city nearby to the rehabilitation hospital, and they have an engineer that can come to your home. That's a service that they don't just automatically offer though, you have to know to ask for it. And they do an assessment to tell you what sort of things and the gradation of the ramp that you might need and chair lifts. And so now we've done those adaptations to the home, but I can tell you, it was another pain point for me, just my beautiful house that we'd spent years renovating. It felt too like an invasion. One of the key lessons I learned and the important opportunities that I think all caregivers need to consider is, again, give yourself the grace to know that we play, as in my case, a woman, so many roles as a mother, as a wife, and a caregiver all at once. Plus, I'm full-time employed. Giving ourselves the grace to know it's not always easy, and it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be happy. Sometimes you feel bad that you're feeling happy because your loved one may be struggling. But I know that there's so much honor in taking care, but it's also a big burden. And so sharing it with others and self-care are ways that I've been able to manage, and also finding fun and making fun. Well, I did the classic thing and took on more because we got a dog. And not just any dog. For me, I thought about what matters to me most and what are the things that give me strength and comfort despite circumstances that I can't really control. For me, there's so much joy in animals. And so I made it a priority to take that on. But I didn't get a puppy. I got an adult dog, but he's not a tiny dog. He's 135 pounds, big Bernese mountain dog. And that is great joy. So even that, the moments of brushing him at night before bed, where I can just kind of get into a soft lull of things are going to be okay. Today was a good day, and I have this unconditional love. I'm the kind of personality of maybe tends toward overachiever, workaholic, but also overachiever when it comes to finding joy. And I used to laugh. I went to yoga and they would talk about mindfulness and finding your center. And that's always been something that's a little bit hard for me as a personality. But I've learned over time the importance of it, giving space and time and pausing. And I have learned that for me and many, restoring that aspect of mindfulness does build a resilience that you can go on. And so I have learned, I guess I've matured and experienced more over time of coping and learning how to cope, that I went from a gal who had a panic attack that morning that the rehab engineer was coming to the house, where I literally, my heart was beating. I called a friend who flew from Boston to watch over us for a couple of days. I went from that sort of scared, hopeless, helpless being to someone who now just can take it moment by moment and stride by stride. And mindfulness is a big part of it, but it can mean whatever you need it to mean in terms of literally meditation or just appreciating. And my mom would tell me, let's relish the moments. And I will always treasure that as her sort of parting words to me. Literally, they were her parting words to me. We must relish the moments. For me, that is what mindfulness means. And everybody would have their own definition, but I think it's critical to being a good parent, a good role model, a good wife, a good advocate. What I can say is no matter the experience of illness, there are those moments that you hang on to and you relish, whether it's with warmth or humor or love. And they do over time, as you build a rhythm of what the new experience is, they have their own comfort because you with time comes the ability to feel more competent and capable. And I think too that humor has its place, but so too is just the experience and being able to laugh at yourself and say, wow, I really messed that up, but I'll get it better the next time. And I love knowing that support is out there, and I think it's our job, all of us in the Caregiver Network and in the Patient Advocacy Network, to help people know you're never alone. There's a listening ear, and there are people who have felt exactly as you felt, whether it's desperation, great hope and optimism, and everything in between. And we are all here for each other and need to keep those connections because that's a key part of getting up and doing it another day and another day. I think I've learned to forgive myself or give myself the grace. And the pandemic has helped all of us. It's a message I say all the time at work to the team. Give yourself grace here. We're in uncharted territories. And we're all having the lived experience that those of us who've had to deal with complex chronic illness firsthand, they've been living this for years. Like before it was a thing, people were isolated, homebound. So we have a new empathy across the board that I think applies to the advocacy we do, the stories we tell, and the poignant ways that we can share what those lived experiences are. So for me professionally, that's been a big area of growth, understanding, appreciation, and I think emphasis that we're building into our advocacy program, because together we're all really in that place and possibly one diagnosis from having to do this anyway. So let's get that muscle memory built. Oftentimes what I've seen, both with my brother Eric, my husband Eric, and my mother, was this very overwhelming feeling of being a burden and worrying about that. And the truth is, patients are a burden, but it doesn't have to be a bad experience. It's something new that you don't expect or plan for, but it is a reality. And the practical truth is there's a great deal of privilege and honor and fear and worry all wrapped into one of being a patient and being a caregiver. And I think that's so powerful, just opening up and knowing that it's important to talk about your biggest fears, your biggest worries between a patient and caregiver, to have that open communication about how you're feeling. Some days will be good, some will be bad. I've had days where I get so angry with him because it takes so long to button a shirt, and I'm in a rush because I need to eat breakfast before a conference call. And then you stop and you say, wait, everything will be okay. I have to take a moment. Today may not be perfect, but it's going to be good enough. And I think that's what patients experience as well, is let's work together as a unit of care and a unit in a family or whatever the relationship is, so that we can find our ways to make this work. So I know, for example, that Eric and my mother worried about being a burden, but we would talk about it and I would ask them, how can I help show you that much of this really matters to me and makes me feel good to help? And how can we talk about the places where, if you ask me this again, it's driving me crazy? So that open, honest communication is a key part of holding things together for each other, but also recognizing the space that you need to process this is hard. But if we do it together as a team, we can make it through. We can make it past, and maybe we can even have some fun.